What's up, everybody? Hope you're doing well. Let me get this out the way at the beginning of this video. I am not here to dunk on Sungwon Cho or ProZD. There's going to be plenty of people doing that. I more so wanted to speak about the actual subject matter because I've spoke about it in the past, and I employ a lot of voice actors here at the Rippaverse. If you do not know what's going on, long story short, this voice actor is now, he announced recently that he will be leaving Twitter. He didn't like the replies and such because he announced that he was voicing a non-Asian character, and he's had some seemingly conflicting thoughts with regards to that, and people have been pointing that stuff out. Again, not going to get in the weeds there. Don't even care. It's not really necessarily important to everything that I'm going to talk about because I believe this is relevant regardless of who it come from or what have you. Okay. I remember when this subject first came up again, like the second time or so in recent years, and I did a video on this and I spoke about this because I've been making this argument, as you guys know, for the better part of a decade, talking about like tokenization, more so in the live action, and even the comic book sense. And what I mean by that is these unnecessary sort of race swap, gender swaps and stuff of various characters. You can go watch all of my old videos. I've done plenty of material on that. So go watch those videos if you're curious about my thoughts on them. And, you know, to see that often it was coming from the same crowd, which is trying to make this argument that, well, you have folks that are employed or rather contracted for these various gigs and they aren't the race of the character that they're voicing. Okay. And that's very interesting because they justify easily a lot of the race swaps and gender swaps and what have you in the live action sense. And this is why, guys, I want you to understand, especially when you throw out the hypocrisy or hypocrite word out there, with a lot of these types, that's not anything that they care about. It's not a set of ethics that they value, especially in entertainment, specifically in like gig economy things. People will say whatever is advantageous to them at the time. So that's why it comes across that way. Well, it's advantageous for this actor or actress that may be Asian to say something like that with the idea or the intent that they are going to now be contracted more for those types of roles. That said, they're not going to decline the non-Asian roles by any means. That doesn't matter to them. They actually feel that they are afforded those opportunities and they will justify them. Where else have you seen that? Well, you've seen this in the live action stuff that I've talked about, right? Where if you have a race swap, it's immediately, let's say if a character goes from white to black, they will do everything in their power to justify it. Well, it's a different universe. They're the best person for the job. All these other things, which are actual lies. We know that. We understand that. On the other hand, if the swap went, let's say, the other way around, well, they would then say, well, that's not right. Well, race was integral to the other character before, and they'll do everything in their power to justify that because, well, it's advantageous to them at the time. When you're operating or rather dealing with these types of people, unfortunately, throwing hypocrite and things out there of that nature is not something that they care about or value. I think they, in all honesty, fully understand that they may say things that are conflicting. They just don't necessarily care because, again, what's advantageous to them at the time? They will contradict themselves from a statement that they made yesterday if it means that, well, the next day it's more advantageous for them to take the opposite. Again, especially in gig economy stuff where they're wanting as many roles as they possibly can. Now, we'll talk about the actual subject and what I feel about it. With visual mediums, I believe that trying to sort of maintain the integrity of that thing that you're building, especially if it's a property that you didn't create, I would hope that that's what you prioritize. But even if you don't, for the fans, I'll say this much. When a fan is upset, like at that needless change in a visual medium, so whether it be like a movie or show or comic book or whatever, you are in no position to basically get upset with them for wanting some sort of consistency in a visual medium. Makes no sense that so many folks would call this stuff out and people would be mad at them for pointing it out, saying that, well, who cares? It's just a fictional story or like all this other nonsense. It's a visual medium, especially getting a property that has been around forever. You can't expect people to just ignore if there are some inaccuracies. Of course, if it crosses over into a different medium, like if you have a comic book that crosses over into live action, yes, you're going to make your concessions. Yes, there's going to be differences. But when you go out of your way, especially in this climate, right, with the political and social justice stuff, go out of your way to make these needless changes, you can't gaslight the audience and try to make it seem as if they are crazy for simply pointing that there's something fundamentally wrong with this. On the other hand, with a voice actor, that is a different thing, and I want to be honest about that, right? Voice actor or voice actress, because they're never seen. So as long as they can voice the character believably, ideally there shouldn't be anything wrong with that. Now, if you were going to be consistent, okay, fine. I'd rather you be, me personally on that, it's just my opinion. I'd much rather you be consistent on it. Okay, if you're going to say only Asians can voice Asians, are cool. Okay, and the live action, don't change. Don't say that, well, they can now act in these other roles. Be consistent on it. But on a serious note, if we're being as objective as we realistically can be, those are different things. Okay? As long as the character appears in that way, but if that person can voice them and it's believable, it's consistent, there should be no problem. Fortunately, when that second time that conversation kind of came about, you had people like in Simpsons and what have you voicing these roles, and they were taking a step back from voicing those roles because, well, they were white, voicing a black character or voicing an Indian character or something like that, which is, again, in retrospect, like, wow, what are we doing here? Okay? It was stupid then. Don't get me wrong. It was dumb then. But just wanted to bring that up with regards to the arguments that they make. Unfortunately, it does you no good to point out their hypocrisy. I'll say this much. There are people that do value that. The folks that value that are generally sitting in the middle and they're looking at things objectively. But people in their camp, that's not anything that they cared about. And I believe that strategically, especially like if you're talking in the social sphere, it's very important for people to be aware of that. You've heard me talk about this extensively over the years. It's important to be aware about what's going on, because you can then devise some sort of plan to combat this foolishness. Because if you try to apply your set of traits and attributes, or rather more so your ethics, your morals, onto these other folks, they will weaponize it as they have done so often, but they don't care about it. It's akin to that sort of leftist atheist who will then say that Jesus wouldn't do this or Jesus wouldn't do that. And at the other side of their mouth, they would down talk Christianity and down talk the believers. They don't care about that. It's not a set of ethics that they actually follow. If they can use that against you, they will, to get you to do whatever they want you to do. They will absolutely do that. They'll do it every single time. So it's important that you're aware that they are not you, and that's not anything that they genuinely care about.